Thank us. My name's Luke Payson, and I am honored to have back on the show Cody Mad Cat Matthews. Cody, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
I'm excited having you back on the show. It's always been good times having you on the show. First time you were on the show, people were really excited to see what you had to say. Got a lot of views because you were coming into enemy territory for a brawl in the Berg for 247 Fighting Championships to take on, at the time, pro undefeated 125er in Victor Lapari, who was the local guy living and training in Vegas. And you came on the show and talked about that. And you were coming off a head kick knockout at the time. Then the last time you were on the show was talking about your incredible knockout of Victor Lapari. So far, every time you come on the show, good things happen. But you're back on the show to talk about an incredible matchup. You have your first international fighter fight, which we'll be talking about, in Ger Harris. He's coming over from Ireland. You're also fighting for the Anthony Pettis Fighting Championships. A lot of exciting things. But first, let's talk just a little bit now that you've had a couple months. That was April 15th when you knocked out Victor Lapari. How long did that buzz and the excitement of getting that incredible knockout and extending your win streak to two, but also two good knockouts, a KO leg kick knockout, and then a really good knockout on his feet? Let's talk about kind of emotionally, how long did that last?
I don't sit on a win too long. A day or two later, it's dying down for me. Obviously, it's right after a big win, people talk to you about it. It gets brought up a lot, but 2-3 days later, it's like I'm ready to get back after it. I have to my coaches make me take a week off after each fight, but 2-3 days later, it's like I kind of don't know what to do with myself sometimes. I'm ready to be back in the gym, get back training a little bit. I'm at least in there, like, coaching guys through sparring, doing something. So, I enjoy my wins a lot, but I try not to sit on them too much because just because you won your last one doesn't mean you're going to win your next one.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And we were actually talking about that mindset that you had when we met at a promotion down there in West Virginia. And that was about 2 weeks, a week and a half after your big knockout of Victor Lapari. And you were there as a coach and as a training partner for a lot of guys. It was really exciting to see your team in action. Well, now that we've kind of just touched on your mindset, attitude, you were undefeated as an amateur and then transitioned to being a pro. And now you're 3-2 as a pro with two knockouts in a row. And you had made it clear in the post-fight interview on MMA Fancast here with me that you really knew that your win over Victor Lapari was going to launch even better things. Right up until that point, fighting him was a big deal. Clearly, it's a huge deal. All respect to him. I'm hoping to see him back, getting back to his winning ways for 247 in the future. That would be great for him and also good for you if he goes off and becomes great in his own right. But let's talk about your upcoming fight. You're going to be fighting Ger Harris, who's coming over from Ireland, your first international fight. So let's talk about him as an opponent and what you're excited about for this fight.
Yeah, so it was definitely an exciting matchup because I've always fought guys kind of from all over the country. This is going to be the first time I'm fighting somebody from out of the country. So he's out of Straight Blast Gym Charleston, I believe. I believe that's the gym run by Owen Roddy. Owen Roddy is Conor McGregor's striking coach. Right. So, it's an international fight. He's out of a well-known gym, has well-known people around him. So it's one of them, situations, again, similar to kind of Lapari, where, he has a good following to him, as do I. So, we get two guys like us to fight, and, it makes for a big matchup. It's not like I'm not just fighting guys right down the road. This is someone from, across the ocean. So it's interesting. It's fun to be at that point in my professional career where I can have these types of fights. And these are the types of fights, excite me and make training even that much more interesting leading up to it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I saw that your opponent's gym is the famous gym for Conor McGregor, and I think this is more of an affiliate because, but still a big deal. Obviously, SBG made famous by Conor McGregor and in the same country. Your opponent, we don't talk a lot about amateur records. I mentioned it when you're a pro that you went undefeated as an amateur. Your opponent was 8-2 as an amateur. And to your point, like, that's a good thing. Yeah, it gets reset. But at the same time, like, that shows that he's doing it for a while. He's got a lot of experience, and he's 2-1 as a pro. You're now 3-2. So you're both still in that great up and coming spot in your career. And I actually saw, and this is kind of interesting, the benefits of being able to look Tapology. Your opponent's first pro fight, he was 0-0, of course, coming into it technically as a pro, and he took on a 3-2 guy. Happens to be your record coming in this fight. So hats off to your opponent. He won against a guy who was 3-2 in his pro debut, and so that shows that he's willing to kind of push himself. And he went 2-0 and then picked up a loss, and now is coming after you. So it is an exciting matchup for both of you. I like what you said about him having fans, and there'll be people watching this fight. Let's talk about the fact that these are all flyweight fights. And just 5-6 years ago, Dana White was talking about how boring Mighty Mouse was, which was just completely false. I mean, Mighty Mouse, I'm sure you agree, Mighty Mouse is a top 3 all-time great UFC fighter. And obviously the greatest 125er. I mean, he's just what he has done. But it's kind of cool to see that even the UFC flyweights become exciting again. And there's a lot of talk about flyweights. And we're talking about you fighting at flyweight. And there's no longer that conversation about whether or not flyweights are exciting or whether or not they'll even be in the UFC. So I think, were you up and coming as an amateur or a young pro when there was still all that nonsense about eliminating the flyweight division? I think now we all know it's here to stay. It's exciting. It's some of the better fights that are put on. And obviously this is a flyweight fight. I looked at the card. There's 2 or 3 flyweight fights on that card. So obviously even on the same card, there's multiple fights at your lighter weight. So talk a little bit about what you think about the flyweight division, since obviously that's going to be your future.
Yeah, I think I had just turned pro whenever that conversation was coming up. So I said, oh, great. If you guys, scrap my weight division, that means I have the option of going to like 1 championship, and that's about it. That was going to be the only other one with 125. Like, unless if I bulk up and go to 35, but my stature is much better built for flyweight. But, when it comes to exciting fights, yeah, flyweights, we move fast. You're starting to see a lot more finishes in the flyweight division, because that was a big complaint for a while, was, you weren't seeing guys that knocked each other out. I've been, someone that packs a good punch. I strike strategically. I find a way to get a finish. But I understand not all flyweights for a while were like that. But you got fight of the year contenders with Figgy Moreno, Demetrius Johnson, one of the most exciting fighters. Hitting the mat return armbar and all these other highlight finishes. Yeah, they were just talking about that on the UFC card on Saturday, how they were saying at one point they might scrap the division. Now it's one of the most exciting ones around. And Bellator is actually about to add a 25 division as well, which excites me, because whenever I fought for Bellator, I fought 35. I said, hey, maybe if things don't work out, I can get signed maybe at 25 for them. And then I found out they didn't have a flyweight division. So, it's the flyweight division's expanding. It's full of exciting fighters. And I think people are starting to realize that. I don't think it's going anywhere now.
Well, I'm glad that you really shared quite a bit about that. Obviously, it makes sense that you would have been very intimately involved. I didn't know when that fell. It's kind of a bizarre thing. I'm glad we're at a great point looking back on it. I thought it was bizarre at the time. It seemed like the wrong conversation to be happening. But I'm glad that with 2 incredible knockouts at the pro level, and of course you had more as an amateur, but pro level knockouts against great opponents, I think, is a great example. You mentioned Figueroa. He really kind of brought some excitement, but Mighty Mouse knocked out at the time, he was just a single champ. He became a triple champ in Triple C, and now they're buddies. It's kind of great to see that. But how was that not exciting? How was Mighty Mouse knocking out a gold medalist in wrestling in the first or second round? How was that not exciting? I mean, by the knees. I think it was like mainly knees and clinch. It was a really incredible when he knocked out Henry Cejudo the first time. It's in the first fight. It's really kind of bizarre that was ever said, but it's great that it's at a great spot. And talking about UFC, talking about kind of the up and coming of featherweight and how well established it is now. Let's talk about Anthony Pettis, former champ for UFC, obviously a well-known guy who now is running the Anthony Pettis Fighting Championship, APFC for short. And when I first saw APFC, I was like, I wonder what that stands for. And then when I saw Anthony Pettis, makes a lot more sense. But this is the sixth time that this promotion is having an event. You're going to be fighting at Richmond, Virginia, July 16th against Ger Harris, as we already said. Talk a little bit about how this fight came together and how excited are you to be fighting for the Anthony Pettis Fighting Championship? How much excitement do you have to kind of fight for a guy that's obviously been a UFC champ? And I also saw a poster. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that this will be streamed or connected to UFC Fight Pass. So kind of talk about the promotion side of things for this upcoming fight.
Yeah, so it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass, so it's pretty accessible to everyone. So not only to the people wanting to watch me at home, but all around the world, people are going to be able to watch this one. And having it be run by someone like Anthony Pettis, who's a former WEC and UFC champion, obviously brings a lot of attention to it. It's going to have a lot of good resources, I'm sure, running the show. I saw the last one; they had a lot of UFC fighters there. They had John Jones actually was at the last one. So, he brings in some interesting people and gets some good eyes on it. But in the past, I thought for Cowboy Cerrone, which was interesting. Okay. So, do that, and now getting to fight for Anthony Pettis, very, very interesting stuff, getting to, have the opportunity to fight for these guys. But the way it all came about is we were planning to fight in August. And then it was late. It was like 11:30 at night. And my coach texts me and he's like, hey, we might have a fight coming up. He's like, call me, tomorrow sometime. Sends me a Tapology of the guy. And, I start checking him out and I'm like, hey, this is an exciting matchup. We're 7 weeks out right now. It's like, I'm in shape. My weight's good. I feel good. It's like, we want to get this going. I'm more than happy to go ahead and do that. So that's also a plus, is like, some guys want, it's only a week off the fight camp, but some guys want that full 8 weeks. And
right.
For me, I told him, I was like, hey, I was doing sprints today already. My conditioning's good. My weight's good. I never let that get out of hand. Something I'm always trying to improve on in between fights, not let it deteriorate. So yeah, it's the fight came together well. About a week and a half or so later, we got the contract signed and, we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that discipline, like you're talking about, you're able to take opportunities like this. This is not an insult to Paddy the Baddy. Obviously, he has got his own style, but he blows up from 55 all the way to, I think, a little over 200 pounds after his fights. And this is documented. He shows his scale and stuff on social media. But even Dana White has said that does mean that he's never going to get a short notice fight or a fight of an opportunity. He just can't, So I think for you, this ends up being kind of a good notice. Yes, you were targeting August, but middle of July is still a great opportunity for you. And it allows you to kind of be focused on what matters, training skills. People like now RIP to Anthony Rumble Johnson. What a sad, what a terrible guy to lose from cancer at such a young age. But he later shared about when he was cutting to 170, that most of his fight camps was really just weight loss camps. And he wasn't able to train a lot of the technique, even though he was doing well. And once he moved up to 205 heavyweight and then 205, he was able to train his skills longer because he wasn't as focused on weight. Is that something that, being on the lightest side from flyweight, is that something that you like, by being disciplined and on weight, or at least on track for weight, you're able to still be skill focused as opposed to weight focused?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really change my nutrition much at all whenever I'm out of camp and in camp. Obviously, once the weekends come, I can't go out and have a few drinks with my friends the way I would in the off season. But except for that, not much really changes. Last few weeks, I might have to dial in my diet the last 2 weeks with, cutting weight. But I stay at a good weight where, I'm a decent sized flyweight where I'm not undersized, but I'm not oversized where, come that 8-week camp, I have to worry all about getting my weight down every single day. I can focus on, any new little things that we might be adding into my game plan, I can focus on training to my fullest potential. So that way, my conditioning and my strength is at, a peak where it needs to be come fight night. And also come the weight cut, I haven't depleted my body of every single drop of water and resource that it needs, or I'm so dehydrated and, dead come the next day that my conditioning's gone, my brain's gone. I stay at a very healthy weight where I'm a good size flyweight, but, I can do what I need to do come fight camp.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Mighty Mouse several times, and as we should, but that's a good example of what he was, right? Kind of the prototypical size, but he certainly wasn't a huge flyweight. He was super athletic and still is. He's still fighting for ONE FC and still doing great. It's interesting, at least as of Tapology, you and your opponent are both listed at the same height. So that's kind of cool. How often are you fighting taller guys? I looked, as far as Tapology goes, Victor Lipari was 4 inches taller than you. It did look like there was a little bit, obviously you figured out, you got a great knockout. But how often in flyweight do you kind of anticipate fighting guys who are just a bit taller? And is it kind of part of the game plan that this guy, at least on paper, is the same height?
Yeah, so I mean, actually what had happened is I went and fought 35 for Bellator and fought Jalen Bates, and Jalen's like 5'10" or 5'11", which I've seen before at bantamweight, but it's like he was just a tall guy, hard to get around. Came back down flyweight, and I was like, I'm gonna get some guys, close to my own size again. Coyle, who I fought, was a very big flyweight. He was probably 5'6", 5'7", much bigger than me in the cage. Same as Victor. Victor was probably even a little bit bigger at that. Mm-hmm. So, typically I'm about the same size as flyweights that I see, but the last two have been pretty big. I think Ger Harris says 5'3" on Tapology. When I've watched some of his fights, he looks a little taller, so he might be 2 inches or so taller than me, but it's nothing substantial. I'm sparring with guys throughout my career that are, or even on a regular basis, they're 5'10", 5'9". So, that's not too much of a worry to me.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I always appreciate your detailed and very well thought out answers, and it kind of shows. And I think that's why flyweights, that weight category, is important, because if somebody wants to be a super tall flyweight, then they're giving up maybe some strength, whereas you could be stronger. I just clicked on Jalen Bates. You mentioned fighting him in Bellator. He was like 9-0 as an amateur. He's currently 7-0 as a pro. So I think that's going to be one of those. He's fighting for Bellator. All his pro fights were for Bellator. You know this, but just for people that may not be aware, you bumping up from flyweight to bantamweight for a guy who sounds like, he is as legit as he can possibly be. And hats off to him. But I think that loss, as disappointing as it could be to have a loss on you have 2 losses, but him being one of them, I think that's a loss where you were up against a guy who's bigger. He's 5'10". It's not at your natural weight class, and he's now a world beater. And I think that's why when you were 2-2 and you came in to fight Victor Lipari, particularly at pro level, not all wins and losses are created the same. You know this. We've talked about this. It's the same thing as amateur, but a lot of times at pro level, because the pro record is your record forever, somebody can look at your record when you came into Pittsburgh and see a 2-2 and not quite recognize that one of those was against a guy who wasn't in your weight division and obviously super, it was a bad matchup, and just the fact that you took that fight shows a lot. So I think it's also good, as disappointing as it is to get a loss against the guy who's 5'10". Like you said, working now, you're probably not going to face anybody 5'10" at 125. If you do, body shots, just like Cowboy Cerrone when he got too lean. And I love Cowboy, but his body was weak at 155 because of the weight cut, just because of his body composition. It's no shame to him. It's no sense of shame to him. It's just that his body was weak. We saw that in his title fight. So really cool to kind of see where your opponent Jalen Bates went. But when we talk about this upcoming fight versus Ger, I'm assuming that's how you say it. Gar? Or am I supposed to?
I think it's Ger, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
It is Irish, ladies and gentlemen, so we don't know if the G, okay, Ger might be right. Harris, we know we won't butcher that. But what are you looking, now that we've kind of talked about the landscape of flyweight, which I think was great to do, your 2 highlight reel knockouts, kind of what you can do against taller opponents, and you have a lot of strength, a lot of explosivity. What's the prediction, or what do you want to kind of leave us with thinking about that upcoming fight? If you don't want to make a prediction, what should we be looking forward to either way?
Yeah, so I mean, I went through and watched some of his. I went and watched his pro fights a little bit, and he's a well-rounded fighter. I believe he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. He has some submission wins. He has Owen Roddy working with him for striking. He has a decent striking game. So he's a well-rounded fighter in all areas, but that's something I pride myself on as well, as I'm also very well-rounded. I just see the areas where I'm well-rounded being better than his, probably. I think that my striking's a bit better than his. I believe my wrestling, is better than his, and also the ground game. Not that his is bad by any means. I just think that I still kind of am a little bit of a step above him in that. But because he's so well-rounded, I can't just go out there and say, like, I know his striking's not going to be as good as mine, or his, ground game's not going to be as good as mine if we're on the ground. I have to really respect every aspect of his game. But, I see a lot of good things with him, but I also do see a lot of flaws that I think I can exploit. And I think I am going to be able to go out there and find the finish within the 15 minutes that we have. But, he's a respectable fighter. I can't let my guard down against him by any means. He packs a little bit of power, and he has a decent submission game. But, it's a good matchup that I do really like.
Well, I think that's what's so exciting about me now following your career. I'm super excited that I can follow along, first having seen you fight live for 247 Fighting Championship. But I think that's what's really good. You've got a great coaching mindset, and I can hear you kind of self-coaching in the sense of allowing yourself to be confident and really perform well, of course, is the goal. And to get a stoppage, obviously, will just disprove that that made-up thing about flyweight anyhow. And I think with potentially 3 finishes in flyweight out of 4 wins would really put an even bigger stamp on your career. But I think it's also good to recognize that nobody's a pro fighter by accident, and he has a good record, a good camp around him, and it's kind of a good thing that he has a jiu-jitsu game as a purple belt and some punching power, or else a win against them wouldn't mean as much. And we've talked about this last time with Victor Lopari. The more excited people are about an opponent of yours, the more excited people are to support that person, the more likely they are to give you credit when you win. You even said that when you beat Victor Lopari, and I got to interview you, were very respectful, and he had sold out. I mean, there was people everywhere for him. It was hundreds of people there for him. He set the record for the number of people that were there for him. But like, that didn't offend you. You were happy that people got to see you perform. Yeah, they were there to see him, but they got to see you have an incredible performance. So same thing for this guy. And I think that's just a great mindset overall to have. Well, as always, it's incredible having you on the show. Let's give you a little opportunity to do thank yous or sponsor shout outs as you come into this big fight for the Anthony Pettis Fighting Championship, July 16th at Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually still gathering sponsors up right now. I know I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of my regulars, because they just announced the fight poster. I'm now getting all that out to them like the last day or two. But no, I always have a lot of teammates around me. I got to help, thank, Coach Rob and everyone at Bauer House that I train with, Brent Walter, Bob Carter, and everyone at Ryoma. Then of course, a lot of my regular training partners, have Chase Thomas, who just won the NLC title, always training with me. Noah Kiska, who had to finish NLC as well, always training with me. Those are kind of the 2 main guys. They always take the voyage down to me, twice a week, an hour 45 to Frederick and back. So, really appreciate them, and just, all my teammates, with the Vicente Junior affiliates.
Well, that's really cool. And I've talked to both of them on this show, so it's kind of great that I'm getting networked in to your gym and the people that you train with. But there are also 2 incredible up-and-comers, still currently amateurs, but that also shows how, and I guess I'll phrase it as a question, how important do you think it is for gyms? Because it is kind of unique. But how important do you think it is for gyms to seamlessly blend the pros training with the high level amateurs and the amateurs training with the pros? I think it makes a lot of sense. What value do you see that for both you as a pro and them as an amateur? Because both those guys are incredible and obviously great sparring partners for you, even though they're still amateurs.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important, especially because you're not always going to get a room full of,
No.
15 pros that are all the same weight working together. Noah and Chase are both a tad bit bigger than me, but not quite as experienced. So it's like I have to, and they're very skilled fighters, so I have to, respect them still. They give me good looks. They help me out in a lot of ways. With me and my experience, I'm able to give them tips and help them out as well. So I think it's really important to have your pros working with your amateurs because that's how they're going to learn. If you just leave your amateurs with, other people that don't have quite as much skill, they're never going to get to that level, as fast as they should, or not going to grow to their true potential. So yeah, I have absolutely no issue with working with somebody, that's even hasn't had a fight yet, as long as they're a good training partner and, they're going to train with me the appropriate way and give me the right looks. That's all that matters to me.
Well, great shout out to them, and also a good encouragement to all those amateurs, maybe even fighters who want to train MMA that haven't even taken a fight. That's a great mindset. That's what I think I mean by the coaching mindset you have. You need certain looks, and obviously, if any sparring partner does something that's inappropriate as a sparring partner, that doesn't matter if they're an amateur or not. They could be a world champion pro, and you would say, "Hey, not working with you." We've heard rumors, not to throw TJ Dillashaw under the bus, but one of the biggest complaints that Alpha Male still has is that he ended the career, supposedly, of another incredible fighter who had won the Ultimate Fighter by knocking him out and giving him a really bad injury. Because man, I forget the guy's name. It's blanking on him. Chris, somebody who still coaches for Team Alpha Male, Chris Holdsworth or something like that. But it was that idea that he was a bad sparring partner as the world champ or as an up and coming because he hurt a fellow teammate and took away his opportunity to have a career. So shout out to all the amateurs out there that are training with pros that are able to respect that skill difference, but also make each other better. I mean, it's fantastic to see that. I love the fact that you have that mindset. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Can't wait to have you on afterwards to talk about it. So for everyone that's in the Richmond, Virginia area, buy tickets from Cody Matthews directly. That way it supports him. And I'm sure there will be, we already talked about, if you can't go in person, check them out on UFC Fight Pass. So thanks so much, Cody, Mad Cat Matthews, for coming on the show. Can't wait to see what you do July 16th.
Thank you very much, Luke. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. You got it.